What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Hangout Spot where you already know it's Real Talk, Sports Talk, live from my man cave. It's your boy Johnny. First and foremost, I hope everybody had an amazing Christmas with your family, friends, your loved ones. A lot of good football games to watch yesterday, so I hope you enjoyed those. I was actually out on a Caribbean cruise with the wife this weekend. We had an amazing time. In fact, I recommend it. If you never ever thought about doing one, think about it. It was an absolute blast. Lots of partying, lots of drinking, lots of eating. And in fact, they actually had a sports bar that were actually playing the games throughout the weekend. So in between all that partying and drinking, I actually had a chance to kind of peep some football games as well. A lot of good stuff that happened this weekend. So let's go around the league real quick and highlight some top performances and key takeaways from this week, week 16 in the NFL, starting with our full slate of Christmas games. We had 3 games yesterday. One of them I thought coming in would be a potential Super Bowl matchup between the Ravens and the Niners at San Francisco, and the Ravens make an absolute statement here. They win this game 33-19. I said coming into the game that the Ravens were one of the best teams at scoring the rock, and they were also one of the best teams at not allowing other teams to score the rock. But so were the Niners. The Niners were coming in winners of 5 in a row. The Ravens were coming in at winners of 4 in a row. Both good offenses, both good defenses. But in a game where the Niners actually had more total yards than the Ravens, more passing yards, and more rushing yards, they also have more turnovers and more penalties, and that is a recipe for disaster. In fact, Brock Purdy, who in my opinion coming into this game was the front runner for MVP, that took a major step backwards. He had 4 interceptions. In my opinion, I think that's his worst game as a pro. He was absolutely horrendous. They had 5 turnovers in all. Sam Darnold came in late in the game and actually threw another interception. They also had 10 penalties, like I mentioned. So very, very undisciplined for the Niners. You kind of, in a way, saw this coming because they had been so good and so dominant. It was almost like, well, they were due for kind of a letdown, right? Personally, I didn't. I should have. I had the Niners to win this game, but the Ravens, like I said, they made a statement. And you got to start talking about Lamar Jackson in that MVP conversation because he's been absolutely insane. This game, 23 of 35 for 252 yards, 2 touchdowns, another 45 yards on the ground. So he continues to be that same Lamar from his MVP season, a guy that can deliver the football and can also take off and pick up yardage. This kid, Zay Flowers, he has some really good chemistry with him. He looks like he could be a special player down the road. 9 catches, 72 yards, and a touchdown. Kudos to Kyle Hamilton, their safety. He had 2 of those Brock Purdy interceptions. Right now, I got to say the Ravens are the most complete team. I thought the Niners were coming in slightly better than the Ravens, but they prove a point. They prove that they're going to be a team to be reckoned with, and you got to give John Harbaugh credit because it seems like every single year the Ravens are in this conversation of potentially going to a Super Bowl. That's impressive, man. I'm jealous. I got to be honest, I'm jealous. But kudos to them. We'll see how the Niners recover from this one, which takes us to our next game, the Eagles. The Eagles actually beat the Giants, right? They got right in this game. I thought this coming into this game, this would be the type of team that can potentially look a lot better against. But the Giants played tough. You got to give the Giants a lot of credit. This game went right down to the wire. In fact, Tommy DeVito was not effective in the first half. He got pulled. Brian Dable went to Tyrod Taylor, and Tyrod Taylor did a good job of moving the football and putting some points on the board and making this, again, a one-possession game with only seconds to go. He ends up throwing an interception in the end zone where he was trying to force the football to get a touchdown. But again, give the Eagles credit for this one because they had lost 3 in a row. And sooner or later, they had to start looking like the Eagle team that went to the Super Bowl last year. I'm not saying that they looked as dominant this game because, again, I still think there's a lot of question marks on their defense. But, Jalen Hurts looked a lot better yesterday. He passed for 301 yards. He also threw a touchdown. He didn't have any interceptions. That's the key. He also rushed for 1. It seems like every single week they either get 1 or 2 of these tush pushes or Philly shoves or whatever you want to call it. So that play seems to be unstoppable. But the key here is that Jalen Hurts, when he's good, he spreads the ball around effectively. Between Antonio Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert, 17 catches, a touchdown. So we'll see. We'll see if this is the game that's going to get the Eagles going. If they can use this as a springboard to start getting better and better, the next 3 weeks, they're going to be a dangerous team in the playoffs. But what about the Raiders, man? You got to give the Raiders credit. I thought that this would be the game that the Chiefs got right because the Chiefs just hadn't been looking like the same team that won the Super Bowl last year. But give the Raiders credit. Their defense was insane. Their defense actually scored 2 touchdowns for them that pushed them to a 20-14 victory They had a pick six against Mahomes. They had a fumble that Isaiah Pacheco put on the ground. They were able to pick that up and get into the end zone. That's how you win games, man, when your defense plays inspired football like their head coach. It's no secret that their defense is playing much better, and Antonio Pierce is the interim head coach. And you got to think, man, maybe he's done enough to secure himself the full-time head coaching duty. I was actually with a Raider fan watching some of this game on the boat, and he said the same thing. I mean, he spoke about the nightmare first half with Josh McDaniels and spoke about how the team culture is a lot different. It's night and day with Antonio Pierce there. And it seems like, again, the whatever he's selling, the team is buying. They're playing much tougher, much more inspired. This was a big game for them. I don't remember the last time they actually beat the Chiefs in Kansas City, but this is a major step in the right direction for not just this year, but for the franchise in general, if they decide to go back to Pierce as the head coach. Right now, they're 7-8. They're still in the playoff hunt, and they have a game against the Colts next week. Again, another team that's vying for that last wild card spot. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. The Chiefs, I don't know. They got the Bengals next week. They got to get right. I don't know what's going on with them. I know that their receiving core has had opportunities catching the football, lots of drops. I think it's a little bit more than that. They have a young receiving core, so it might be a cultural issue with the way they're executing. But either way, they have to get this thing right, and they have to start to get hot right now because things are not looking good. I think they'll make it to the playoffs, but this same Chiefs team, I personally don't think they win a playoff game if they go in playing the way they're playing. And then you had our Sunday games. Jets won. Go figure. I picked the Commanders to win. I figured the Jets would lose out, potentially try to get a higher draft pick. But no, they don't do that. They win 30-28 in a game that they did everything possible to try to lose. They actually gave up a 20-point halftime lead. The Commanders took the lead late in that game. And then, again, Trevor Siemian, he was competent. He played good enough to enable the Jets or put the Jets in a position to win this game. He drove the team down the field, and then Greg Zuerlein actually kicked the game winner. I think personally, he's one of the best kickers in the league, probably co-MVP with Thomas Morstead. They've been the best two players on the team. Morstead punting, Greg Zuerlein kicking. I saw something that popped up that said that Zuerlein had hit 23, 24 field goals in a row, which broke a Jets record. I don't know how true that is, but anyway, nonetheless, pretty impressive. But as I mentioned, Siemian started this game. He played competent, but the key here was Breece Hall. You give him the ball, good things happen. I've been saying that for weeks and weeks. 95 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns, and then another 96 yards receiving. Garrett Wilson, 9 catches, 76 yards. Again, he's your go-to guy. He's going to help you move the chains. The Jets right now are 6-9. In my opinion, I'd like to see them win out and finish the season on a positive note. They got a tough Browns team on Thursday night. That's not good because, again, the Jets have the tendency to embarrass themselves on national TV. But let's see what happens. But then you have some fans that were upset because they want the Jets to lose out to get a higher draft pick. Either way, I don't knock those fans. Everybody's different. Everybody's going to cheer for their team a little bit differently. Personally, again, I'm not one of these big guys that, wants my team to tank for a higher pick because you never know. I mean, it's a crapshoot in the draft. Who's going to be available, who they're going to get, if they're going to pick the right guy. I mean, if your GM has the goods, he'll pick the right guy at 5 or at 15. So, again, I personally like to see the Jets win out, finish the season on a positive note, hopefully get some reinforcements in the offseason, and then run it back next year with Aaron Rodgers. But we'll see what happens. Like I said, Thursday night, may be a laugher, which takes us to Dallas. Dallas and the Dolphin game. That was a good game. I thought this game would be a lot more higher scoring, but nonetheless, you got to give the Dolphins credit. They win this game on a late game field goal by Jason Sanders, 22-20, in a game that the Cowboys took the lead, but then gave the ball back to Tua and the Dolphins offense. And again, they put themselves in a position in a limited amount of time at the end of the game. Jason Sanders, the kicker, he was phenomenal. 5 field goals in this game. Dak Prescott actually had a nice comeback game. He had a terrible game last week against the Bills. He threw for 253 yards and 2 touchdowns, one of them to CeeDee Lamb. Again, a guy that continues to be an absolute monster catching the football for the Cowboys this year. And Tyreek Hill, he played, looked like he willed himself through it. He was effective, didn't score a touchdown, but again, 9 catches, 99 yards. he's a threat. He's a player that you got to watch. So, even if they don't give him the ball, they move him in motion. It potentially opens up, some plays for some other receivers. So give the Dolphins credit. A lot of people were saying coming into this game that the Dolphins can't beat a good team. Well, guess what? They just beat a good team. So you got to give them their flowers. Give them credit where credit is due. Right now at 11-4, they have the second seed in the playoffs, a potential bye. Second seed in the playoffs, I'm sorry. Going in right now if the season ended, and a potential, they could even potentially get that first spot, and get that bye because they're playing the Ravens next week. That's going to be a huge game. I can't wait to do my picks for next week. And then, Dallas, they took a big hit. Now they're no longer the NFC East leaders. They're now back in the wild card, even though they've clinched a playoff spot. But, let's hope that the Dallas offensive train can get going, because this is already 2 weeks in a row where they don't score 30 points. And they had spoiled you. 5 games before that, they were averaging 38 points a game. So is this a time where they get a little bit cold going into the playoffs? Not a good time to get cold, but we'll see what happens. Their defense is still good. It's going to keep them engaged. Congratulations, kudos to the Lions. They win the division. I saw a stat on TV that this is the first time in 30 years that they have won that division. That is absolutely incredible. Congratulations if you're a Lions fan. I know how it feels to have years and years of suffering, rooting for a team that you're emotionally invested in, and they don't make the playoffs, they don't win the division. Well, guess what? Now you got yourselves a really good football team. Dan Campbell is a good coach. I like him a lot. He's an emotional leader. The team has taken the shape of him, and they play inspired, emotional football. I love it when they are a dual threat and they can be balanced on offense. They're dangerous. This week was a testament to that. They actually rushed for 143 yards. Jahmyr Gibbs had himself a game, 80 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns. And but the Vikings, I don't know. I mean, they lost this game mostly because Nick Mullins threw for a lot of yards. He threw for over 400 yards, 411 to be exact, but he also threw 4 picks, and those were killers. In fact, he threw a pick to end the game on a drive where the Vikings could have potentially tied this game or actually went up in front. Right now at 7-8, their playoff hopes take a major hit, but they're still in it. There's a couple of other teams that are in it as well. We'll talk about that in a second. It'll be interesting to see where they go. The Jaguars, I don't know what's going on with the Jaguars. They are struggling. They lose to a red-hot Buccaneer teams who are playing. The Buccaneers are playing the opposite of the way the Jaguars are playing. They win this game 30-12. Baker Mayfield, another great game, 283 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. That's the key. Mike Evans, a beast, 2 touchdowns this game as well. Trevor Lawrence, I don't know what's going on with him. Again, I don't know if it's the high ankle sprain or what. You got to give the kid credit. He plays every single game. In fact, I saw a stat that he had not missed a game as a pro. That is insane to me, especially in today's NFL. But again, 2 interceptions this game. You got to worry about the Jaguars. If they peak out in the middle of the season and now they decided to go cold the rest of the way, they're hanging on by a thread in that division in the South, in the AFC South. So they better start to pick it up, because we're going to talk about some of the other teams that are vying for that division lead as we go along. Give the Rams credit. The Rams scored 30 points again. Sean McVay, one of our better, more innovative play callers in the league. I was sour on them. A lot of people were sour on them, the first 5-6 games of the season, but they've turned it around. They beat the Saints, 30-22 in a game where Matthew Stafford again throws for over 300 yards. He's been red hot, 328 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He has weapons. Kyron Williams on the ground, 104 yards, a touchdown. Puka Nacua continues to impress. 9 catches, 164 yards, and a touchdown. It's crazy. It seems like the Rams are getting hot at the right time. And if the season ended today, they would have the 6th seed in the playoffs. Who would have thought that, the way they were playing 5-6 weeks ago? Kudos to the Rams and for Sean McVay for turning things around there. The Saints, they dropped this game, and they're now 7-8. They're still in playoff contention and obviously in contention to win the NFC South, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough because, again, they're playing very, very inconsistent. Very inconsistent. On the other hand, the Falcons won, so they climbed back up in there at 7-8, and they're also a game out of that first place spot. They beat the Colts. That was a big game. I thought the Colts would go in and steamroll them, especially with the quarterback change. But give Arthur Smith credit. I mean, he inserts Taylor Heineke into the game. He provides that spark, 29 yards passing, a touchdown, no interceptions. It'd be interesting to see how the Colts rebound from this game, because like I said, right now they are hanging by a thread if the season ended, they'd be the 7th seed, but a lot of things can change in the next couple of weeks, especially with the two teams that are vying for that 7th seed who played each other, the Bengals and the Steelers. That was a really good game. Give the Steelers a lot of credit. Give Mike Tomlin a lot of credit. There's been talk around Pittsburgh that he could potentially be gone after this season. I got to be honest, I don't understand how the Steelers do that. I think Mike Tomlin is a great coach. I would hope that the Jets take him as a coach. I would take him in a heartbeat over Robert Saleh. But he inserts Mason Rudolph into the starting lineup. He pulled Trubisky. That wasn't working. Didn't take him long to realize that. Puts Mason Rudolph in. He passed for 290 yards and 2 touchdowns. Him and Pickens were an amazing combination. Pickens had 195 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns. He was absolutely insane. I picked the Bengals to win this game going in because they were the hot team. But Jake Browning, he had his first really, really bad game of the season. For the most part, he had been doing a good job with taking care of the football. But this game, 3 turnovers, 3 interceptions. So, that's not going to cut it. So you better hope that he gets back to that same player that he was the last few weeks, because it's going to be interesting. A lot of good games coming up with some playoff implications. Next week they play the Chiefs. And again, the Chiefs are trying to get right as well. They're trying to put their foot on the gas pedal going into the playoffs. Steelers play the Seahawks. And that's going to be a good game as well because the Seahawks won. They inserted Geno Smith back in the starting lineup. It worked. He threw for 227 yards, 2 touchdowns. They beat the Titans 20-17. They are now back in the playoff mix. Right now, if the season ended, they have the 7th seed at 8-7. Be interesting to see how that plays out as well because there's a lot of other teams vying for that. We'll get into that in 1 second. Joe Flacco continues to play well from street clothes to now playoff team. He threw for another 300-yard passing game. They beat the Texans. Very, very impressed with that victory, even though C.J. Stroud didn't play. But he threw for 368 yards, 3 touchdowns. The Browns are now 10-5. They have the 6th seed in the playoffs. They are rolling right now. And you got to think that maybe Flacco was that quarterback that they needed that could provide that stability, that quarterback that has that championship playoff pedigree that's going to make, for the most part, it's going to make really good decisions, especially late in games. I mean, this what they're doing right now with all the injuries that they had on the offensive line, losing their top running back, Nick Chubb to a knee injury, and Flacco being their 4th quarterback that they have this year. I mean, you got to give their head coach a lot of credit. If the season ended right now, I mean, I think Stefanski, in my opinion, is coach of the year. He would have my vote. But the Texans, on the other hand, again, at 8-7, things are starting to get a little bit tight. They have pulled themselves out of the 7th seed now, so they're on the outside looking in. They better hope that C.J. Stroud plays this week. He gives them the best chance to win. More than likely coming back from a concussion. He probably, in my opinion, will be cleared this week, and they're going to need that. Hopefully he can provide a spark. But things are getting late really early here, so they got to start to put their foot on the gas if they're going to tend to make the playoffs as well, which takes us to our current playoff picture. The division leaders in the AFC, you have Baltimore. They're at 12-3, the best record in not just the AFC, but in football. They've clinched a playoff spot, not the division just yet, but you got to think that's right around the corner. Miami is at 11-4. They've clinched the playoff spot already. KC at 9-6. They better start getting right. And the Jaguars are hanging on to that division lead by a thread. They're at 8-7. The wild card teams are the Cleveland Browns at 10-5, like I just mentioned. Buffalo, who have won 3 in a row, they squeak out a victory against the Chargers, but they get even though I thought that it would be more of a layup game, a blowout game, give the Chargers credit. They played inspired football. That usually tends to happen when they fire a head coach and put another one in the interim role. But Buffalo did what they needed to do to win this game, and that's all that matters. They've won 3 in a row. They're at 9-6 currently. If the season ended, they have the 6th seed, and in my opinion, a dangerous team going into the postseason. And then you got the Colts. They're also hanging by a thread at 8-7, and then you have Houston, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Cincinnati all at 8-7, right there on the outside looking in, ready to pounce on that 7th spot. So, this is where the Colts have to start to get, to ride Minshew Mania. This is where Minshew Mania really needs to take it to the next level if they intend to hold on to that 7th spot. And then in the NFC, you have the Niners at 11-4. They've clinched the playoff spot in the division. You have the Eagles, who moved into the NFC East lead at 11-4 with their win and Dallas's loss. The Lions, they clinched the division. They're now 11-4. And then you have the Buccaneers, like I mentioned earlier, who are 8-7. They're the leader in the NFC South. But you have 4 teams. You have the Vikings. I'm sorry, and they not with our wild card teams. My apologies. The wild card teams now, which round out the 7. You have Dallas at 10-5. They've already clinched the division. A playoff spot. Then you have the Rams that have climbed in to the 6th seed. They're 8-7, and then the Seahawks with this win, they are now the 7th seed at 8-7. And then 4 teams, like I was going to say before, 4 teams are vying for that 7th spot. They're at 7-8. You have the Vikings, the Falcons, the Green Bay Packers, and the Saints. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. Like I said last week and the week prior, this is the best month in football, because if you have a team that is playing meaningful games in December, this is an exciting time to be a football fan. I'm a Jet fan, even though my team is eliminated. I love football. I love watching good football. This is when the games get a lot tougher, for teams to be able to pull out, a lot tougher for people like myself to pick these games, because again, you got some teams that are trying to step it up a notch. You got some teams that are just playing better. You got some teams that might be getting cold at this time. So this is a great time. December football is always great. It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out in the next 3 weeks. And that's my recap for the week. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. And if you enjoyed this video and you're new to watching, please subscribe, drop a like. Also hit that notification bar if you like. That way you can be alerted anytime I drop a new video. I'm dropping new content all the time. But anyway, thank you again. I hope everybody had a happy holiday. Merry Christmas yesterday. I know mine was great. I hope you enjoyed yours as well. Thank you for whoever tuned in, and thank you for watching and for your support. As always, this is your boy Johnny. Be on the lookout later on this week for my picks video. That's coming on more than likely on Thursday afternoon. So stay tuned to that. As always, this is your boy Johnny signing out from the Hangout Spot, and I'll talk to everybody soon.